and welcome back to Tachikawa. You are listening to Sakamichi Nights. My name is Matthew Boynton, and I'm joined, as always, by Daniel Bellamy. How are you today, Daniel?
Sakamichi Nights.
Excellent. That's why we have you here. Now, Dan, I know you're a huge podcast fan, right? How many hours of podcasts would you say you listen to every week?
Man, it's a lot. It's hard to put a number on it.
Would the number be 0?
Yeah, that's why it's hard to put a number on it.
Yeah.
It's an absence of numbers.
It is a big fat goose egg. How would you like to be in the presence of Japan's #1 podcast fan?
Couldn't care less, really. That doesn't matter to me at all.
That's excellent. That's just the kind of enthusiasm that I'm looking for, because we welcome to Sakamichi Nights tonight a new special guest. It is Brian from Fukuoka, Japan's #1 podcast fan. Welcome to the pod, Brian.
Well, thank you very much. And right off the bat, you made a mistake.
Okay.
It's not Brian from Fukuoka. It's Brian in Fukuoka.
Well, you're not in Fukuoka right now.
I am not in Fukuoka right now, but that is how I'm known. So you might want to redo the introduction there.
We're being live fact-checked on
right.
the podcast.
Hey, listen. What do you expect? I am Japan's #1 podcast guest.
And Japan's #1 pedant, it seems, as well. Welcome to Tachikawa, Brian. How are you? Brian in Tachikawa. How are you enjoying Tachikawa so far?
I'm enjoying it very, very nicely. Is that the way to say it? I'm enjoying myself greatly. I have some delicious beer here, and you guys have made me feel so welcome.
Well, you are very welcome. You are very welcome to Tachikawa, Brian. Whenever we have a guest on the pod, we like to ask them a few questions about beer and their enjoyment of beer. Why don't you take it away, Dan?
Question the first. What was the first craft beer you remember drinking?
Oh my goodness. Well, this has to go back when I was living in Los Angeles many, many moons ago. There was a craft beer place in Pasadena, and so that was my first introduction into craft beer, and let me say, I was a fan right from the start.
Nice. Do you remember an early beer that you drank?
It was definitely a pale ale. And ever since then, I've loved pale ales. So every time I go to like a new craft place, the first thing I order is a pale ale, and then I just go from there. Yes.
That's a pretty solid technique, isn't it?
Yes.
You want to start light and work your way up from there.
Exactly.
Some people do it the other way around. Like they'll start with a double imperial stout and then climb down from there.
A rookie mistake, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. Or a pro move. I guess it depends how your evening ends up.
Right. You don't hear a lot of people say, I like pale ales. I seek out pale ales.
No?
No. I mean, I don't anyway. Do you?
Oh, yeah, I hear it all the time.
Okay, all right. Man, I'm the weird one.
You're moving in the wrong circles, Dan.
Clearly.
Maybe I'm still a rookie making those rookie mistakes. Is that a rookie mistake?
I don't think that's a rookie mistake.
I think we're not here to judge you at all.
I am.
Sorry, I'm not here to judge you at all.
Thank you, Daniel. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Question
all right.
second.
Second question. What is your local craft beer hangout? I assume it's in Fukuoka. It better be in Fukuoka.
It is in Fukuoka. I mean, to say hangout is... I mean, I wish I could hang out more. With 2 kids and stuff, it's tough to get out sometimes. But there is a really nice craft beer place near Ohori Park in Fukuoka called Beerholic.
Beerholic?
Yes.
Okay.
And they have several nice beers on tap. And they have 2 showcases with lots of cans. So...
Is that what you like about that place? They have a good variety? What is it about Beerholic that you like?
Well, there's a number of things. Good variety. It's close to Ohori Park, so you can buy some cans and then head on into the park and drink them at the picnic tables and stuff there.
That's called a wino move.
Yes. I mean, I didn't realize that it had a name, but now that I realize that. And there are some, lovely beers on tap and lovely people pouring the beers.
I think,
there.
Yeah, you might go to a craft beer place because it's close or because it's new or just because it catches your eye, but it's often the atmosphere that keeps you coming back, isn't it?
Yes.
What do you look for in terms of atmosphere in a bar that you want to go back to?
Good question. Something where I feel welcome, something where I can relax, and something that has good scenery.
It's all Sakamichi.
Yeah.
Check all these boxes.
100% Sakamichi Brewing.
That's why I feel so welcome and so at home here.
Well, we hope this won't be the last time you come in.
No, it won't, for sure.
Third question: what is the best? Can you think of a best or most memorable beer you've had recently? Is it a best? A best. Anyway,
Let's go.
you understand the question.
Yes, I do. But do I have an answer? That is the real question.
I hope so.
A lot of questions here. We're just asking questions.
Just asking questions. Yeah, the most memorable beer that I've had recently is...
Clearly, it left a big impression on you.
Yes.
So it's pale ales, right? They really stand out, don't they?
Yeah. I don't really have an answer for you.
You have just had a couple of beers from our taps. Do
Right.
those stick out in your memory at all?
No.
Okay, great.
Good. Moving on then. Fourth question. Have you ever poured a beer down the sink?
No, I've never poured a beer down the sink.
Okay.
I've probably left a beer on the counter or on the table and just not finished it.
You leave it for somebody else to pour down.
Exactly.
Right.
I've
See how
left
this
it.
works.
Yeah, for
Now
some
that's a pro move. Yes.
Yeah.
Somebody else will have to deal with this if I leave it here.
Exactly. No, I don't think so. I think I'm not so much of a aficionado that if I taste a beer that doesn't have what I'm looking for, that I just completely abandon it. I probably just grin and bear it,
Right.
and then ask for something different next time. That's kind of my personality, I think. Unfortunately or fortunately, depends on.
Well, I guess the listener can judge whether you're enjoying this podcast experience or if you're just grinning and bearing it.
I'm loving it.
As we get through it. Thank you very much for answering those questions. We will be celebrating and drinking some beer on this podcast in just a few minutes. Before that, I want to give a very quick brewery update to let people know what we've been doing in the brewery this week. Double kegging. Yesterday and today, we've kegged 2 fresh new batches of beer. Today was a fresh batch of Mount Crushmore. I can see the excitement in your eyes, Brian. That one's going to be on tap very soon, I imagine. And then yesterday, we kegged a beer that we made together with our friends at Chelas. Hello, Chelas friends. That is the Midnight Surfer, which is the fresh batch of the Happy Hoppy Pee-Pee, the Happy Hoppy Pseudo Pills. The previous one was Midnight Sun, right? This one is a Midnight Surfer, so slightly different hops this time, but basically the same beer. Tax office, if you're listening, it's exactly the same beer, and that's why I didn't submit a new recipe. That's your quick brewery update. Dan, are we going to be celebrating any beer on this podcast?
Oh, you know it. Why would we not?
It was
Set me up there?
more of a rhetorical question than anything else.
So I don't have to answer it all then.
Please tell us what the beer that we're going to be celebrating.
We're going to celebrate the aforementioned Midnight Surfer, which again we made in conjunction with our friends at Chelas. If you haven't been to Chelas, it's in Oyamadai, which is next to Giagaoka, and they do killer tacos there as well. Yeah. So it's their first anniversary coming up this weekend. So we're actually kind of having a sneak peek of this beer because we held it back so they can put it on tap first at their anniversary party on Saturday. But we're going to have a little taste of it.
We sneakers peekers.
Yeah.
It's a hoppy pseudo pills. Before we drink it, Brian, what do you imagine we mean by a pseudo pills?
Not quite a pills. Kind
Okay.
of somewhat like a pills, but not exactly like a pills.
Yeah, that's basically exactly
Right.
right. Pilsner is a lager, right? It's made with lager yeast, and this is a beer that tastes like a Pilsner, but is not made with lager yeast.
Oh,
it's made with Norwegian Kvik yeast. Well, I think that's quite enough prattling. Why don't we just taste the beer and surf on through to the other side? All right, surf's up. We are drinking 3 glasses of Midnight Surfer, our hoppy pseudo pills that we made together with our friends at Chelas. Dan, what do you think of this beer?
Yeah, it's good.
Great. Any other thoughts?
All right, I can elaborate. We changed this one. The Midnight Sun had Citra hops, specifically American Noble Citra hops. And we changed this one to use Azaka hops. And Azaka hops are often used in hazy IPAs and other beers that you want to be kind of fruity and tropical, because that's what they bring to the party. It's a lot of kind of tropical guava and mango and orange and lemon and things like that. And I think you get a lot of that in this. A lot of those kind of tropical fruit flavors in both the aroma and the taste. But it's quite light as well. I think it finishes pretty fast and dry like a lager. So I feel like it invites you to kind of come back to it again for another sip. Chelas, Rene from Chelas is from San Diego, and so he wanted a beer that was kind of like that beer that you could bring a cooler of to the beach. Obviously, you have to hide it from the police, but you could bring a cooler of it to the beach and have 4 or 5 of them over the course of an afternoon sitting on the beach with your friends. And I feel like this beer, you could do this, right? It's not going to blow out your palate, and it kind of invites you back for another sip.
What do you think, Brian? You agree with all of that?
I agree with everything he just said.
Great.
Daniel is perfect. It is very hoppy, but it does have those tropical features, and it is extremely crushable. I think I could drink this all day long.
You've said the magic word.
Yes.
Yes, crushability is our watchword here at Sakamichi Brewing. Did you ever used to read any of those Richard Scarry books when you were little? Like Scary Town, there's a little worm.
He was a worm, wasn't he?
He was a worm who drove around in a car shaped like an apple.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
aware of him, yeah.
No, I didn't.
They're very popular in the UK. But occasionally, in that kind of comic book, you would see some cartoon character with a big bowl of tropical fruit in it, right? And even as a child, you might not recognize all the fruits, but you would have an idea what it would taste like to just tuck into that big bowl of tropical fruits. And I think this beer, to me, matches that childhood dream I had of tucking into a big bowl of
miscellaneous
tropical fruits together with a worm who's driving a car shaped like an apple. You'd agree with that, right? You're nodding away. I think I'm just voicing the thoughts of the room here.
Did you do a lot of drugs as a child?
No, I just read a lot of books.
We say this sometimes, and I don't know if I don't have like what's the word? A disciplined palate, an educated enough palate. I taste a lot of things, and I go like, it's kind of a melange of different fruits. I read some people's reviews, and they're like, a hint of lemon giving way to guava and overripe passion fruit. And then I drink it, and I go, oh yeah, I taste that same thing, but I can't come up with that on my own. I know when I first had a taste of this out of the tank, I came up with like mango and orange kind of stood out to me. But sometimes it does just taste like, yeah, that's a lot of tropical fruit. That's hanging out with Richard Scarry and a pile of fruit and an apple car.
Big bowl of fruits. I think Richard Scarry was the author rather than the worm. We're drifting slightly from the point here.
Anyway,
right.
My point is, it's like a tropical punch almost, right? It's a little hard to pin down exactly what the flavors are in it, but you smell it and you taste it, and you're like, yeah, that's a big tropical hit of fruit.
What could be more magical than hanging out in Scary Town, eating a big bowl of tropical fruits, crushing a few beers with a worm? That does sound a little bit like a pairing suggestion, though. So why don't we move on to pair this beer a little bit? Brian, as you know, every week I roll this dice and we choose one of 8 different options to pair the beer. But of course, we can't have the 2 most recent ones. Dan, which were?
Always caught by surprise. Video game and place, location.
All right, so we're not going to be in Scary Town and we're not going to be playing the worm game. What are we going to be doing? Number 1, food or cuisine. So if you could pair this beer with any kind of food or national cuisine, what would it be?
I'm going to take the obvious one. I would pair this with tacos from Chelas, because that's what this beer is designed for. It's designed to complement. Rene he makes everything himself. He makes the salsas himself. He makes everything that goes into it himself. Everything's fresh. So when he uses vegetables, you get a real strong hit of whatever the vegetable flavor is. When he uses any kind of cheese or salsa or whatever, you're going to taste everything that's in it. And I think this beer has a lot of flavor, but it's not going to overshadow the flavor of the tacos. So I'm going to drink this beer with Renee and the good people at Chelas, in Chelas, and pair it with their tacos.
That was a triple pairing.
Yeah, man.
Very impressive. You can tell he's a professional, right? He's been doing this for a long time. Brian, how about you?
Obvious. You know, my wife is a great cook, and she makes a really good ratatouille.
Okay. Are you sure it's her that's cooking it?
Even though she's...
Is she wearing a hat while she's doing it?
She is wearing a hat.
Special ratatouille hat.
I'm going to have to investigate this closer. I don't think she's that close with any rodents, but
There's
I
only
could
one
be
way
wrong.
to find out.
But a ratatouille that has a lot of vegetables in it, a nice eggplant, some paprika, and I think this would go perfect with my wife's ratatouille.
So you've completely lost me. Eggplants? Paprikas?
Yeah.
What are these things? I've never heard of either of those.
Well, paprika in Japanese is basically the red and orange and yellow peppers.
Okay. And an eggplant?
Yeah, eggplant in our
You mean an
ratatouille.
aubergine?
No.
I'm being deliberately pedantic. Is it coming across that I'm being deliberately
I think we're all
pedantic?
picking it up, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to go in a slightly different direction and say that I would like to drink this beer with our friends at Chelas while sitting in Chelas and eating some tacos from Chelas. I'm surprised nobody else has suggested this.
No one has.
But I've never actually been there. I haven't been able to make it over there yet. So I think this would be an excellent chance for me to go over to Jiugaoka. Where did you say it is, Dan?
Oyama-dai, right next to Jiugaoka.
Next to Jiugaoka. Enjoy some wonderful tacos. I hear excellent things about them. And drink some so-so beer together with those excellent tacos.
Can I change my answer to...
You better be original. Go ahead, what is it?
No, I'm kidding.
Sticking with the ratatouille.
No, I was going to... I mean, since both of you guys think that Chelas is the place to go and enjoy the tacos there with this beer, then...
Honestly,
I don't want to be left out.
It's well worth going. It's a great little spot. You should absolutely go. I know time is of a premium for you, Matthew, but you should absolutely go there sometime.
I will make it a priority to get over there. Brian,
Yes.
in addition to being Japan's #1 podcast fan, you are also you have an interesting job there. You are a forensic toxicologist.
That's correct, yes.
Right? So, a forensic toxicologist in Fukuoka. Why are you in Tokyo at the moment?
Well, I'm here for the Japanese Association of Forensic Toxicology Conference, the annual conference, which is taking place at Showa Daigaku, Showa University.
That's a good answer, but it's not actually correct.
No.
As Japan's #1 podcast fan, you are here to convince Dan to start listening to podcasts.
Yes. Plus, just being here at Sakamichi Brewing, that was the #1 reason.
Right. It just happened to coincide.
Yeah. It was just a coincidence that the premier forensic toxicology conference in Japan was happening in Tokyo.
Let me ask something that might be a stupid question, but regular listeners to the podcast will know that's kind of our stock in trade. What does a forensic toxicologist do every day?
Well, we have a number of forensic autopsies that we perform on people who have passed away in Fukuoka Prefecture. And so my job is to test their blood and tissue samples to make sure that there's no poisons or drugs that may have contributed to their cause of death. That's my job.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask, is it kind of a CSI lab style thing, or is it more of a research position where you're researching new ways to poison people and putting that knowledge out into the universe? But it is actually, it's a fairly practical day-to-day job.
That's right. Yeah, it is. It is very practical. It is very. My #1 job is to perform these analyses on these blood and tissue samples that we get from autopsies, and then my research duties are on top of that. You know, just as being a member of a university and doing research is just part of the deal. But my my day-to-day, most of my time is dealing with actual cases that we have, doing actual toxicology on actual autopsy, blood, and tissue samples.
What is it that triggers that to happen? Like, not everybody gets this treatment after they pass away, right?
That's
there
right.
must be some kind of thing that they say, like, okay, we need to check this.
That's true. Well, most of the time you have, when you have a dead body, you have to determine whether or not the death was due to some suspicious circumstances. Was the death sudden? Was it unexpected? Was it unusual? And so those cases are typically, investigated further. So the police department in Japan will make the decision of whether or not it requires a forensic autopsy. And if it does, then they will reach out to the medical universities to perform those autopsies. And I'm at Fukuoka University, I'm the one who takes those blood and tissue samples and analyzes them for the possibility of having drugs or poisons in them.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating and interesting job, and that's why I actually reached out to a few of our listeners to solicit a few questions to ask a forensic toxicologist anything. This first one comes in from Dexter in Miami, and he has a two-part question. He wants to know, first, what's your favorite sandwich? And second, do you have any home cleaning tips? Sandwich.
The funny thing about that question is I never watched Dexter because watching forensic shows are typically, it's like, it just makes me mad because
they get so much stuff wrong.
Right. But my favorite sandwich is obviously the Reuben.
Okay. Reuben on rye?
Yes.
Is there anywhere in Japan where you're able to get that sandwich? No,
not at all.
Where is the best place to get a Reuben on rye?
It's in Los Angeles at a place called The Hat. But and then what was the second question? It was
home cleaning tips.
Home cleaning tips, yes. A lot of bleach.
If you spilled anything, made a mess, you need to clean up.
I did read a while ago that like some police captains were talking. It was, I don't know what the article was about, but they were talking about how these guys were saying that like with the advent of like CSI and Dexter and some other shows, that the incidence of crime scenes that had been cleaned or somehow treated with bleach had like skyrocketed because it destroys the DNA evidence, right? And like people aren't good enough at cleaning up to get all of it, so there's police still find things that they can use. But apparently these shows have been like a real pain in the ass for actual police and forensic toxicologists.
That's true. And there is actually a phenomenon called the CSI effect. So CSI is a famous show in America, crime scene investigation. And basically after this show became popular, it was like every network had its own version of CSI. There was NCIS, there was just all these different types of
CSI Miami,
CSI New York. And basically what happened is the viewing public, the layperson, they watched these shows and they got this idea that they knew more about forensic science than they actually really knew because they just knew the Hollywood version of it.
Right.
And so when they get on like a jury or something and the prosecution doesn't have the DNA evidence that they're expecting because they've watched CSI, and CSI, of course, they have all the evidence that you would need, then their standards are just too high. And so they're like, well, then you can't prove that this person committed this crime, so we're just going to find them innocent. So this is a real, actual, documented, scientifically researched phenomenon, the CSI effect, where people just, because they think they know so much because they've watched all these different shows, then they just, their standards are just too high.
They're expecting a kind of slam dunk evidence setup that completely proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that this person murdered this guy, right?
Exactly. Like, if there's no DNA evidence, then they're like, well, then how could we convict?
Right.
Whereas, circumstantial evidence is still evidence. You just, it's that plus, witness testimony and other things. Just because you don't have DNA evidence doesn't mean because the DNA evidence was destroyed by bleach or whatever. That doesn't mean that you don't have enough evidence to convict a person of murder. Standards are just, too high. That's the CSI effect phenomenon.
We're getting into deep water today.
Wow.
On this podcast.
So it's currently Wednesday, it's 9:54 p.m. This is a cast iron alibi for you. Whatever you're going to be accused of over the next couple of weeks, you are here with us in this room. We have one other question, actually, which kind of links into this point that you're talking about. This one comes in, it's marked as urgent, and it comes in from Casey in Ishikawa, who has requested to stay anonymous.
Who?
He's requested to stay anonymous. He has two questions. First, which commonly available and low-priced household cleaning chemicals are best at removing fingerprints from a scene? And secondly, what is the shortest amount of time that it can take a flock of chickens to completely dispose of a human body?
All right, wait a minute. Okay, so
this is marked as urgent.
Okay. First of all, you don't need any kind of chemical to get rid of fingerprints. You just need to wipe down a surface with a cloth, maybe a damp cloth, because fingerprints, there's just an imprint into whatever dust or silt or
so anything that will remove residue or grease will get rid of fingerprints.
I mean, fingerprints are basically deposited by the
prints on your finger.
Right, exactly. The fat or the whatever is
the lipids.
The lipids. Great word there. That are on your finger. It doesn't have to be anything other than that. So if you just do a good job of wiping down with a damp cloth or whatever, you'll get rid of fingerprints.
Useful.
Yeah.
Good to know. And the chicken question?
I don't know much about chickens. What was the chicken issue?
What is the shortest amount of time it will take a flock of chickens to completely dispose of a human body? Well, he didn't say human, just a body.
We're reading between the lines there a little bit, yeah.
Right. A flock of chickens. It depends on how many chickens.
Yes, define flock.
And it depends on how hungry they are. But I would say it would take a very, very long time because...
are we including the bones?
Yeah.
Can you get back in touch with this anonymous person?
If you want to speed it up, Casey and Ishikawa, who requested to stay anonymous, I suggest either getting more chickens or starving your chickens, making them hungry, or giving them a taste for human flesh, though that one could backfire on you in the long run. Thank you for getting in touch and asking your questions. Brian, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you for coming up all the way to Tachikawa to be part of this episode of Sakamichi Nights. Do you have anything final to say to our dozens of listeners?
It's my pleasure to be here. I enjoyed every moment of it. The beer was delicious. And I just want to say to everyone out there, if you haven't been to Sakamichi Brewing, you really need to come out, taste the delicious beer that they have, enjoy the company, and that's it.
Excellent. You're setting a pretty high bar for subsequent guests with this endorsement. That was very good.
Nobody's done that before. That was great.
I should ask that question more often. Dan, do we have anything coming up this weekend that you think people ought to know about?
Oh man, do we ever. This weekend from Friday, we're doing a tap takeover with Beezy, as I like to call them. Gareth from Beezy is coming down. That's a brewery up in Aomori that frequent visitors to Sakamichi will be familiar with. We order their beer quite a lot, kegs and cans. It's always excellent, and it's always very popular. You went up there, Matthew, and made a beer together with them, and we have that here. We also have a bunch of other great beers from them. Gareth from Beezy's going to be here on Friday. It's going to be a good time. We're going to have a lot of their beer on and a bunch of our beers on and the collaboration on. It's going to be good fun.
Going to be good. The collaboration is an all-mosaic lager called Shirotsume no Romansu. So that one will be on tap from Friday. And this is the only place you get to drink it on draft in the whole of Japan. They're not selling it kegs to anywhere else. Brian, I see you nodding your head and narrowing your eyes at me.
I want to come. I want to come and be here and be a part of it, but unfortunately I have to make my way back down to Fukuoka so that I can continue to be Brian in Fukuoka.
Okay, well, thank you for that reminder. Yes, that's a nice bow to put on the episode. Thank you very much for joining us, Brian. It's been really fun chatting to you. Thank you, Daniel Bellamy, for being here.
Thank you.
Would you like?
Do you want some more of that?
Yes.
I don't know what you're looking for.
Thank you to you for listening, and we will see you again next time.